I hate that term, but why do I love it, but I hate it. And so we are the unauthorized source, your unauthorized source, yours, Jared, of
I'm both a source and this is my source, and I am the source
of fantasy news and information. One of the main reasons I like having you on the podcast is you're a wealth of information. Like you,
thank you.
I think you look at things so much. You and this is why I need a fourth person who's a little bit more feely like me. But you and AJ like look at things and it's like analytically, like data.
Yeah. Yeah. And I have no attachment to my guys from last year. And in fact, a lot of times if a guy had a really good year last year, I'll probably be less likely to pay the price for him. Like even if he was on my team and there's some emotional or sentimental attachment, whatever little I have, I'm less likely because you're buying high on him, and there's just in the NFL each year there's just so much that changes, so many different factors that can affect a player's performance, not to mention injury. So it very much is just pretty strictly analytical approach for me.
Now it can also be a blind spot for both of us, as you think you are, but you've said some things lately, and some of the guys you're after is because they were so good last year. I forget who we're talking about, but
well, like a couple of guys like that, I will, unless there's something weird with their situation, like Ezekiel Elliott is a guy that if he hadn't been holding out, I would have been drafting him in every league that I could have. DeAndre Hopkins is another guy that I just trust. So there are, but even that's like it's not an emotional or sentimental attachment. It's just I think
but Chris Carson, that's who it was. Like Chris Carson.
Yeah, but it's all about the value though.
That used to be more true. Like now I see him going in the 4th and 5th round.
Well, he was always going 5th round. I was getting him 5th round early, but
that's too rich for my blood.
No, that's perfect for me, because I mean he was like usually the only guys that he was getting, like the only other like pretty solid like running backs left after him for a long time when I was taking him were guys like Mark Ingram and maybe Tevin Coleman or something like that. Like pretty much everybody else was going before him. And so I don't know. I
when you compare him to Tevin Coleman, I mean,
but I mean, I think just his numbers last year, like he had really good numbers. I forget where he finished as, I can look and see where he finished among the top running backs, but it's just all the stuff lining up. Basically, the price he was at, the fact that Seattle is going to be run heavy, the fact that he has established even more of a gap between him and Penny, the fact that even if he does go down, then you do have like a true, handcuff running back that you could get behind him. So
I'm just warning you though, since like I've been heavily invested up until this year in the Seahawks running in their backfield. And I'm just warning you, man, they love committees and they have this uncanny misfortune of destroying their running backs. The running backs are constantly injured.
That part's true. I don't dispute you on that. Their running backs are injured a lot. Carson, it can be pretty injury prone. But I don't know. We'll see. I mean, but they've basically had like a committee for a long time after Marshawn Lynch. I mean, he was they did treat him as a bell cow,
well, not his last 2 years.
Well, but I mean, as he was getting older, but
we didn't know looking back, we know that, but at the time everybody was telling me, no, Marshawn's fine. like, but they were doing committee stuff back then too. Because I had a
Uh,
lot of shares of Marshawn. It's like 3 years before he retired. Well, I guess he still has he came out of retirement, right? But before he left the Seahawks.
right.
And I remember he had some kind of stomach injury.
Yeah.
And
Well,
that was it. He had some good games, but
we should have seen that coming, though. I mean, I
did.
I mean, like I started to shy away from him late because I mean, just typically running backs when they get like even like late 20s, like, you can start getting sketchy at like 28, 29, let alone 30 plus. So,
Yeah.
So that was part of the thing. But I mean, Carson, the part of the thing is, they got rid of Mike Davis, or Mike Davis went to Chicago.
Yeah.
So he was a big part of it last year. So it's pretty much just now, Carson and Penny.
Nope. ProSize is going to work his way into that. It's going to be a committee. ProSize is a great player, man. He's a talented running back. He just hasn't been healthy.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, they will, share touches and stuff, but I think Carson has just done well enough that that they're going to give him the bulk of the touches. We'll start finding out in a week.
Yep, we will. All right, well, let's get to the news. We're waiting on AJ Herschel, the kid. I'm here with It's Jared. I got to get the vibrato. I can't get it, but
that's pretty good.
We need to look at the news because there's some hot stuff. I can't wait to get your guy. Well, waiting on AJ. He might not show up today. He might have something going on. But I want to get your guys' take because this is making my day nice. I took Singletary almost everywhere. And with my last pick, I almost dropped him today thinking, I don't know if this is going to work out. And it's funny, this morning, this is how bad of an analyst I am. I'm not an analyst, but this is how, I started thinking, you know what? I really like Shady. I think Shady is a very talented player. I'm going to start picking him up and dropping Singletary. Thank God I didn't.
Yeah. Well, and who knows? I mean, like McCoy could end up working himself into some other situation. I mean, people have talked about him going to Houston.
So the news is Shady was dropped by the Bills. And
well, the news was, I think he's going to be like, I don't think they've actually technically
they released him.
Did they? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. When it first broke this morning, it just said that he was expected to be released. So I hadn't ever confirmed that he had, because I got distracted by the Clowney trade. But yeah. So I actually I had 0 shares of either one of them because I'm like, man, like Frank, if they keep them all, Singletary, McCoy, Frank Gore, Josh Allen runs a good bit. I just didn't really bother, but I was able to pick up Singletary in like 6 leagues. So
yeah, because he's on the waiver wire everywhere. He was like my last pick. Nobody knew who he was.
Right. Yeah, I had heard good stuff about him, but it ended up just looking like they were all going to keep them all. So that's a pretty attractive little situation there if it's just him and Frank Gore. I mean, a young running back in Buffalo, they're probably going to run the ball a good bit. Josh Allen's still a young quarterback, and they don't really, who are the Bills receivers? What's the guy's name who used to be in Arizona that went to Baltimore and then I think Buffalo now? John Brown. I think he's there. I think Forrester had some good games last year, but it's not like they have some passing attack that's going to lead the way.
Who? Well, they got John Brown. They got what's his name? Starts with the R.
The guy I was talking about, or different?
Robert what? Foster?
Robert Forrester. Foster. Yeah. But still, I mean, in the grand scheme of like wide receiver hierarchies, like they're
Yeah.
pretty low on the list of like most talented wide receiver corps. So
I wouldn't sleep on them though. I think it's still going to be. I think it's still going to be. I actually think they're going to improve quite a bit this year. They got a great defense, and I think. I mean, this might just be wishful thinking, but I think Josh Allen takes a step forward, and that might mean fantasy wise he's not as valuable because I don't think he's going to run as much. Although I don't know.
yeah.
But I love John Brown. That's another guy I'm picking up everywhere with my last couple of picks, or off the waiver wire. In our league, I took him off the waiver wire.
Yeah. I think he's one of those guys that like just burned me so much before that not necessarily burned me, but I'm just like he's like Devontae
Freeman.
Devontae Parker.
Oh, Parker.
Parker. Yeah. For where like, is this going to be the year? Because like when Brown was in Arizona, Larry Fitzgerald was getting older, and then it's like, oh, okay, is Brown going to emerge here? And he would have a game here and there, but he just never really did. And he's almost to me like Parker, where it's like, who else is there in Miami? He's going to be the guy.
But that had a lot to do with his sickle cell disease, which is not a factor as much in the East. It was something about being in the West and the elevation or something like that. There was.
But Arizona's a valley, the Phoenix area is a valley. So
right, but he had to play so many people at high elevations.
Yeah. It's possible. We'll see.
He was good last year with
the Ravens. He was solid. Yeah.
Well, he was solid until Jackson came on the scene and couldn't throw the ball more than 10 feet.
Yeah. I just got, you may have seen it too, a notification where the Eagles released Josh Adams, who was their running back down the stretch last year. That was it's just so funny how running back committees work in the NFL, where you'll have a guy that it's like, oh man, he looks pretty good, and he like carried the load down the stretch. Nope, you're not even good enough to be like our fourth running back now. So,
well, it's because running back doesn't matter. You said it best when you said like the system, the offensive line,
right?
Play calling means so much. That's why when you see a terrible, like a lot of times you'll see somebody struggling on one team, and then they go to another team and just flourish because the system's better. You get the better coach. It makes me think of the Packers, and how, what's his name? Aaron Jones. Aaron Jones? Yeah.
Yeah, it's Aaron Jones now. Mm-hmm.
Like how he thrived more when there was just better play calling for him.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So does the Clowney trade do anything for fantasy?
Maybe a little bit. I mean, Seattle was a team that I kind of wondered if their defense would be a little bit underrated this year. I actually have them in several leagues because I didn't really bother drafting a top defense. And so I was looking at like, all right, who's out there? Who are they playing in week 1? And, Seattle always, plays well, or generally plays well at home with that 12th man noise behind them. And so they're playing Cincinnati in week 1, Cincinnati, who's going to be without AJ Green, Cincinnati, whose offensive line isn't the best. And so,
you picked up Seattle, didn't you recently?
Yeah, I did. Yeah. Because like I said, I didn't bother drafting a defense. Most of the top ones were gone. So there's some good matchups out there. Like the Cowboys, host the Giants in week 1. That could be,
their first 3 games, Cowboys, Giants, and then they play like Miami, and then they play the first 3 games are sweet.
Yeah,
and everybody thinks that like whoever was on top last year is going to be top this year.
Right.
Never happens with defenses.
Yeah, it never does. It never does. Like Jacksonville, I remember people, because Jacksonville had that huge 2017 season, people were, especially like in snake drafts, you'd see teams that would take the Jacksonville defense in like the 6th or 7th round, and then in auction drafts pay like $5 or $6 for them, and so it was, but really that is the thing, is just year to year defenses change so much. So like Chicago's kind of the one this year, and I think Chicago will still be good, but
I do think
who
that
knows,
Yeah. And so the dropping of Josh Adams.
Yeah.
Who's the rookie there? I really like him.
Yeah. So the rookie there is Miles Sanders.
Yeah.
But the Eagles situation is still like Josh Adams. Nobody was really, that I knew of, was expecting him to really factor in. So it's not really big news as much as maybe like where might he end up as a backup or something.
I think it's still good for Sanders in the sense that it shows that they are confident in him and Jordan Howard.
But they also have who's the little guy? Darren Sproles. And so I think it was just a case of
too many cooks.
And what would be Sproles has a unique role. He's a fast little quick player.
He's like 56 though.
I know. Well, yeah, that's true. But he's still somewhat different. He can be, because Philadelphia loves to use running back by committee. And so, Sanders is the most talented. Jordan Howard is a veteran who, I don't know, they traded for him, and so they're probably going to try to use him somehow. I've never been that high on Jordan Howard. He maybe he's more of a goal line guy because he's not a great pass catcher. But then you've got Sproles, who's the quick little guy that you can dump the ball off to, and then they've also still, I think, got Corey Clement. So
that's right.
It's just like they can't really. There's no place for Adams unless he would have beaten out Clement, which apparently he didn't. So I think it's more interesting to see like where might Adams go, that he could be a backup. Maybe he goes to, we talked about McCoy with Houston. Maybe Adams is a possibility for Houston.
Well, the Bucks are another team that really need a running back.
The Bucks need a running back. The Jets are looking for a better backup, I read, behind McCoy.
I think Montgomery's going to be fine.
Maybe so. They released Elijah McGuire.
But they still have Cannon and Montgomery. So I think the Jets. You read that? That's interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I read a thing saying that the Jets and the Texans were both. Which, I mean, the Texans were an obvious one after Miller's injury. But I don't know. We'll see. We'll see on that one.
Interesting. Was there anything else on the news that caught your eye? There's a lot of stuff about defenses.
Mm-hmm. I think that was, let's see, let me just scroll through I can find my notifications here real quick.
It does, like I see in Roto World says that Singletary is expected to be the guy.
Yeah, I would assume so. I mean, like Frank Gore at some point.
I mean, he fell off last year. Like just watching him, like he has a great work ethic. He is dogged, He does what he does. He's solid as a running back, but he's slow. Yeah. He's gotten way slow.
Right.
I mean, it's amazing that he's still doing it,
Oh, yeah. Right. But yeah. I mean, and everybody loves Frank Gore. Like he was with the Colts for a while, and he went there. He signed there the year that Andre Johnson signed there after the Texans released him, Andre Johnson, the wide receiver. And Andre Johnson got like cut like part of the way through the season. And Gore, despite not having an offensive line there, still performed pretty well and outperformed, of course, Trent Richardson. But I mean, who didn't perform Trent Richardson? So Frank Gore's got, I think, a special place in a lot of people's hearts. If you're a Canes fan or a 49ers fan or a Colts fan.
Was he a Canes?
Yeah, he came out of Miami. And don't you remember? Let's see, wasn't it? trying to think if it was him or someone else that I'm thinking of that like tore his ACL his senior year or junior year.
I don't think I was even watching football back then.
That's true. That's true. You probably weren't. I think it was Gore. I could be thinking of somebody else. Now I'm curious real quick. But
yeah, I mean, I remember Gore. So my first experience with Gore was when he was with the 49ers and just tearing it up on a regular basis.
Mm-hmm.
But at that point he was already slowing down a bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
So did you figure it out?
Yeah, I just pulled it up, of course. Well, I saw it in the yeah. So oh no, it was Willis McGahee. Okay, Willis McGahee. But no, Frank Gore did tear his ACL too. So yeah, I found a little thing that says many people forget that Willis McGahee was not supposed to be the starting running back for the 2002 Miami Hurricanes. He found him in he found him in the starting lineup because Gore tore his ACL in spring practice. Gore returned in the 2003 season, then tore the same ACL against West Virginia. So it was Frank Gore. So he tore his ACL twice in back-to-back years in college, and then came on and look at the NFL career he's had. So I remembered there being I remembered he tore it once, but I'd forgotten that he tore it back-to-back years. So I mean, for him to do that and then still be this guy still going in the NFL, that's insane.
Yep. That's pretty amazing. It goes to your point about modern technology. I mean, because that's not even modern technology. That was way back when. But there are some people that can just, I mean, especially with modern technology, can just come back from an ACL and still be 100%.
Especially if you're younger. Like I think what you're saying is valid. Like as players get, close to like that 30 mark, and especially beyond that, like it's just difficult. Your body just doesn't heal. I was talking.
That might be the thing that how old you are.
Yeah, I was listening to I think it's Dan Crenshaw, the representative from Texas, who lost his eye in the war. He's had the whole blow up with the SNL joke and all that. He was actually on Joe Rogan's podcast. And it's actually a pretty good one. It's pretty interesting.
I gotta check it out.
But he was talking about how, like with the SEALs, if you're like 24, 25, it's very like he broke his leg trying to go through some of the SEAL stuff, and he said like if you're in your mid 20s, like even at 25, like it's extremely difficult to make it through it at that point without like breaking or tearing something. Said like that stuff is really like designed for like people in their early 20s. That's like how rigorous it is and how razor thin the margin of error is. So, so basically it just goes to the fact that like, in your early 20s, like your body is just, so much stronger and so much better able to heal.
Yeah. Well, and that's why I think Watson is 100% now, like I don't worry about that. Mm-hmm. There's a couple players that after our discussion, I went back and looked at people that have, and there's a lot more than I thought, and I can't really think of them now, but are coming off the season, coming off a torn ACL, and it really isn't that big of a deal when they're younger. I'm trying to think if there are any. So I can't think of any that are like sort of up in the years. What's his name?
Well,
who's the quarterback took over in Denver?
Flacco.
So Flacco is, he had that ACL, but he's up in years. But
well, what's interesting is, I can't think of anybody with an ACL specific injury, but a guy who had an injury that's supposed to be worse than an ACL. Achilles.
Oh, Achilles.
The Achilles is the one that, Achilles heel, so to speak, is supposed to be the one that really can like ruin players' careers. And in, last season, the Broncos wide receiver, Emmanuel Sanders, tore his Achilles. He's back and
And
they say he looks as good as ever.
I saw
So
him play in the preseason, and he
yeah.
looked better. Like you were saying,
Mhm.
with modern technology, he looked
Yeah.
better.
Right. Yeah. Because it really is, I think, just like just almost like putting a new, like stronger, part on there. I think in most cases, and so you get like a little bit of an initial boost.
Mm.
Because the same thing happens with, like, I've seen a lot with like pitchers and Tommy John surgery, is like they'll come back and initially, like, the tendon, the new tendon is like, it's brand new, it's stronger, and so they're able to do a little bit better. So yeah, it's really pretty crazy, man. That StreamYard.
Oh,
Did you see that?
I flashed it.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
I just seen what that button does. Yes, and so that goes to what I wanted to continue talking about the strategy. Last night I had another draft with AJ and a bunch of his friends, and what I found. Oh, I continue to do the four running backs to start off, and just go running back heavy.
I've got, whenever you're done, I've got a story that will beat yours on that. But
okay.
Yeah.
Well, anyways, I just brought it up to say that, like, I still love it. It still went really well, and Manny Sanders is somebody who I really rely on in that, like, 6th, 7th round.
Who?
Manuel Sanders.
Oh, Emmanuel Sanders.
Yeah,
Okay,
we're just
gotcha.
Manny.
Gotcha.
To really bolster my wide receiver course, since I didn't take any early. So what's your story?
So I was in an auction draft last night, $100 auction league. And, every auction league is just so different. You never know what you're going to get. And so I went in, like, with one strategy that I had in mind, and then just completely abandoned it because just players were just going for insane amounts. Like literally even all the, like, 2nd round wide receivers, like Juju, who may go normally for like 45, or like Tyreek, who'll go for around 40. Everyone, all of them were going for like 50 plus.
Whoa,
And
Juju.
Yeah. And so I was just like, I don't want to pay this for these guys, And so I actually ended up, I took Dalvin Cook for like $44, which is like his usual asking price. But that's pretty good. And then I had a ton of money left. I was actually afraid I was going to end up with too much money or not really be able to spend it. But there were all these still, like, good, like pretty good players still on the board. And so I ended up with like 7 running backs, like 6 starters, and then a backup. But I ended up with
7 running backs.
And I'm going to try to trade, 1 or 2. But so I got Cook. I got Freeman for 25, Josh Jacobs and Chris Carson in the 20s, Sony Michel for like 20, Duke Johnson for 10.
Nice.
And then I just ended up taking like Jalen Samuels, Pittsburgh's backup, for $1 at the end of the draft, because nobody else was there. And then the receivers, like all the top receivers, went for like insane prices. And then some of the lower tier wide receivers, like especially with like Hilton. Hilton was dirt cheap. Robert Woods was dirt cheap. Robbie Anderson. So I got, my receiving core is Robert Woods, T.Y. Hilton, Robbie Anderson, and D.D. Westbrook, who I really like. I got the 4 of them for a total of $33.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
Well, people are still so low on Didi. I think it's because there was like nothing that flashed in the off season. He had some nice catches, but nobody has been talking about him, and you can still get way down in the 7th round sometimes.
Matthew Berry, of course, we've talked about how we don't like Matthew Berry, but to back up our Didi love, like he was talking about, I think it was him that was talking about like seeing a scenario where Didi ends up as a top, like fringe top 10 wide receiver, So
I think talent wise, he's off the charts. The only The only question is like, I still have questions about Nick Foles and whether or not Nick Foles can. I mean, I'm just going like right now. I'm just going through my mind. There's nothing about the way Nick Foles plays that gives me a lot. Even though he's a highly productive and efficient player, quarterback. There's nothing that gives me like I don't think like I'm glad Nick Foles is throwing to Dede. You know.
Well, but it's so preferable to Blake Bortles and whatever was behind Blake Bortles before, it'll be interesting to see because really Philadelphia, what really worked for Philadelphia last year, or I guess kind of the past 2 years was tailoring that offense to Foles. And they really apparently like changed it. I don't remember all the details of it, but they really changed it a good bit to kind of suit his strengths and weaknesses. So like if he doesn't have an offense that's tailored to him, like he does not play well. If he does,
what do they call it? He's a system quarterback. He does not improvise well, which is opposite of Wentz. So that's why they had to change it so much. Wentz is all about improvising, running, scrambling, running around, getting out of But you're right. Foles needs to know what are his options and what to do when they're not there.
Yeah. And maybe it'll just be like that. They connected really well in the preseason, and I saw like. Again, and it's preseason, you don't know for sure, but like basically in the preseason for what little Foles played, like half of his targets were to Dede, So, who's the tight end in Jacksonville? Who are the other receivers besides Lee, who's, helped
coming off an ACL.
Yeah. Coming off an ACL. Older, it hasn't quite lived up to the,
I don't think he's played in 2 years, has he?
I don't remember how much he's played in the past. I know, of course, he missed, like pretty much a full season with an injury, but I don't remember like the other one. But I mean, just who else do they have? And they can't run it every time with Fournette. So I like Dede a lot as being able to get him at the price he's at.
Who they do have another good player, Cole. What's his name? Not Cole Beasley.
Keelan Cole.
Keelan Cole.
Yeah.
Keelan Cole's like last year. People were touting him as like better than Dede, but
I wonder if it's like I haven't heard anything about him.
But we haven't heard much about Dede either.
No, I've heard a good bit about Dede.
Really?
Yeah.
All right.
I have. So, but Keelan Cole, I haven't heard anything, and maybe he's like the wide receiver version of Josh Adams, where it's like. Last year, it's like, oh, he's the one that's here. He's what we have. And then now, like, who cares about Keelan Cole? So
I got to check, see if he's still on the team because I really have not heard anything.
I have not heard one word about him. I assume he's still there. But yeah, I don't. Now that we mentioned that, I haven't heard anything about him. So
I mean, he's still on the roster.
Yeah. I'm just curious to see if any like articles pop up or anything like that. Okay. So the first thing that pops up on my screen is I don't know what this website is, but it says Scout, and it says Keelan Cole is not projected to see consistent snaps and is not a viable fantasy option. So
wow. And that's from this year?
That's from 19 hours ago. That's from It just the preview thing says Scout. Let's see what website this is. Scout.com.
Well, that's interesting. That just continues my love for Dede, but also I think people are sleeping on Leonard Fournette.
Oh, just to finish this off here, just because this is funny, it says Keelan Cole is not projected to be worth a roster spot. His 10 projected fantasy points. 10 for the season puts him at 193 behind Darius Jennings and ahead of Ray McLeod, two other guys that I have never heard of.
That's fascinating because this time last year so many of these analysts were
Yeah.
just raving about him, and
Yeah.
not because of any skill, but just because of, I think there's too often
Mm.
there's this perception, like you're saying,
Mhm.
about like when you don't hear about somebody, they just kind of fall off the radar. And because last year this time we weren't hearing much about Didi, we were hearing everything about Keelan Cole.
Yeah.
Anyways,
Yeah.
so Leonard Fournette, I think he's another player that I think is going to thrive in this new offense. And he's not as bad. He's just burned so many people,
Mhm.
and he just does so many dumb things. People forget how good of running back he is. Like
Yeah.
he's a beast.
He is. I only have him in one league because and he's not a player that he's not a player that I've tried to avoid in drafts, but he's just always been going higher than like the spot he's going at. There's always been somebody else that I wanted to take there, or an auction. The price that I wanted to pay wasn't that high, because like in auctions, and the one I've seen, sometimes he'll go for around 30. Sometimes it's usually more like closer to 35. And for a couple of bucks more, you can get Todd Gurley,
Yeah.
or for, $10 less, you can get, Freeman or Carson or Aaron Jones or, somebody. So,
So you would have Freeman, because usually he's right around that area. Like, I guess he's around before Freeman, Devontae Freeman, right?
yeah, Freeman, like I said, like Freeman, it's kind of weird. I guess in the snake drafts I've seen,
They're right about the
they're
same.
right about the same, and I really haven't taken them much in snake drafts. In auction drafts, though,
Freeman's
again,
way below price wise.
Freeman's like $10 below price wise. It's really weird, the difference between snake drafts and auction drafts on things like that, on players who are typically going about the same place in a snake draft, but in auction or going somewhere else. So, yeah, I don't know. Out of the two of them, I like Fournette's situation a little bit better, and I like him a little bit better, being a little bit younger. But even though like Freeman's had some trouble staying healthy too, like it just seems like Fournette is just not going to make it through a full season.
Well, he does seem to have like skinny ankles or something. Like he's always, even in college, he would have problems with his feet and ankles.
And his style. Look at his style of running. He's just a bruising running back, and which Freeman is to a certain extent too. I mean, he's deceptively that way. Like he's not that body type. He just is like, I will hit you. He just invites contact. So
it's interesting that that's who Harris. So Matthew Harris was comparing
Chris Harris.
Chris, why do I always say Matthew Harris?
You combine him and Matthew Berry.
Yeah, no. Totally opposite. They used to work together, but hated each other. But Chris Harris was comparing Aaron Jones. He was saying like Aaron Jones is a lesser version of Devontae Freeman, like Devontae Freeman light.
I don't know if he's even necessarily a lesser version. I mean, I definitely see that comparison.
Well, where you see it, he showed this very, very clearly in the film, is that Freeman has so much more wiggle. It's just he's got the juke, like whereas if you watch Aaron Jones, he just kind of plows into people.
Yeah.
He's got like one little juke he does, but at the beginning, but typically like it's kind of frustrating as a Packers fan to watch him. Like he doesn't have any vision. He will just run. He put his head down once he, and he's a beast, but he just plows into people. He's fast. He's super fast.
Yeah.
Which I think like when he does do any kind of like course correction, gives him so much room because he just flies past people. His acceleration is amazing, but his vision and wiggle is like,
maybe they'll teach him to try to avoid contact a little bit more. And vision you can't really teach, I don't think, but I don't know.
Well, and it's interesting when you see the difference. So Harris, like, he does a really good job of going to the tape and like showing you multiple situations. And he said, like, people complain about his pass protection. He said, it's like, he showed like, okay, it's not but for a running back, it's like fine, you know.
Yeah.
But he did show how what's his name? Jamal
Williams.
Yeah, how Jamal Williams just has a knack for knowing, like, seeing, like, understanding the game, and vision wise, he knows what's going on more than he doesn't have the speed and athleticism that that Aaron Jones has. So it's interesting. I think they'll continue to be somewhat of a
duo.
It makes me want to go and pick up Jamal Williams.
Yeah, I don't know if I really want him for, like, I guess I would want him more along the lines of just like having another handcuff of like maybe Jones gets hurt, because he has had some, trouble staying healthy.
Because like you said, like some of these guys, like Fournette, he runs with tenacity, and like those are the guys that typically get hurt.
Yeah.
Who is it? It reminds me because that goes back to Carson. Who was the guy? I can't believe I don't remember his name, but he was the guy in Seattle, and everybody was high on him. Like everybody saw him as the heir to beast mode. What was his name? The running back there that took over, and he just kept getting hurt because he ran with that kind of ferocity.
Yeah, I think that one has blanked. There have been too many Seahawks running backs. I've lost that one. I remember, I think, the one you're talking about, but it's that one's gone.
Yeah, but it is something to think about when in fantasy, because it's a double-edged sword because they can get you so many points because they're always trying to get that extra yard, but at the same time it makes them sort of injury prone.
Yeah. It's really tough. And I was noticing, Saquon Barkley last year, all these monster games. And so I was looking to see, like, just how consistent he was, because when you're looking at paying like $75 for a guy, if you get the first pick, you take Saquon Barkley. If you're in a snake draft, you just take Saquon Barkley, and don't really think twice about that, unless you're like a huge like believer in Christian McCaffrey or something, which I like Christian McCaffrey, but I think they're like clearly there's a separation there. But in an auction draft, you really have to decide, do I want to commit nearly 40% of my budget maybe to one player? And so I was looking at Saquon's stuff, and he really had like two or like maybe three bad games where he just didn't provide much of anything. All the other 13, he was just a monster, but he had like three bad games. Two of the three were the fantasy playoffs.
Oh man.
It was
who was like, the defense?
Well, and that's the thing. The defense wasn't anyone. It was they played the Titans in one, and it was that game. I'm going to pull it up here while we're talking. They played the Titans in one of them, and that was that game where they lost to the Titans 17-0. And then one was where they played the Colts, and they.
So what can you derive from that? Is it just, I mean, like, what are you saying? Because it sounds like that's just serendipitous.
Yeah.
During the.
Well, I wonder, I wonder if he maybe wore down a little bit, because that was just kind of my fear, was like, if you take this guy, like, yeah, he's given you so much, but when you really need him, when it really counts, is he going to wear down a little bit? And it may not have been that, I mean, he came back like,
well, they weren't resting him for the playoffs.
No. But I mean, like, in the fantasy, like in the fantasy playoffs, but,
I'm saying, but a lot of times in the fantasy playoffs, you'll get these running backs that are rested for their playoffs. You know what I mean?
True.
They weren't, but they could have been. I do remember they were trying things out. You know what I mean? They were. They might have just been trying to keep him from getting injured because at that point they were done.
Yeah. Just got an update that talks between the Cowboys and Ezekiel Elliott are intensifying, with both sides aiming to wrap up a new deal this weekend.
Thank God.
We'll see.
Because speaking of Barkley, that's that league where I traded Barkley for Ezekiel Elliott.
Oh.
Your league, you're in my league.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But that's someone I'd rather have than Barkley is in the fantasy playoffs. Ezekiel Elliott will be unless they do rest him for the playoffs, that could be something they do. But
yeah. Yeah, it's it's hard to say. I don't know what's gonna really happen with that. But yeah, I don't know. But it's just kind of like you're gambling a whole lot on one player. I mean, it just so happened that he had down games those weeks, but
yeah.
If he gets hurt or something, like, man, that's just a lot to commit to one player. So in auction.
Well, the last thing I want to talk about is there's a particular handcuff situation I want to get your take on. And you brought up Cook. You've taken Cook in a couple leagues, right? And Delvin Cook.
Yeah.
And I don't know why everybody has, or not everybody, I'll just say all the leagues I'm in sort of, it looks like people are picking up, what's his name? Madison or no, as his backup. Who are they?
Oh, Alexander Madison.
Madison, yeah. I don't think Madison is his backup. I think Boone is the person to take. I watched Boone play over, and I know I talk a lot about preseason doesn't matter, but there's just, and it's more than just watching his skill and play. A lot of analysts are surprised that Boone is not higher on the depth chart. He's just known as a more skilled player than Madison.
Yeah, I don't really know I don't really know all that much about them. I know that Dalvin Cook called Boone like his clone or something like that. I saw a little thing about that.
Interesting.
But like I saw a couple of beat writers that were saying that Madison, like when you go to camp there, just like everybody was just like raving about him, or as they put it, like preaching his gospel or something. Madison. Yeah. So I don't know what the situation is there, but as far as I can tell, it looks like, Madison they're making him the guy. Maybe, if they keep Boone, he becomes the backup later at some point. But
what happens a lot of times is you'll see they'll slate him in as the backup, but he'll end up being the pass catching back.
Yeah.
And the real backup is the third guy, the banger. And I think, man, I was watching Boone play, and I know it was against, the future, gym teachers of America, but still I don't know. It was fun to watch him play. And I love players like that, where you just, that's who I try to get, is players that I just love watching play.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I really, I guess I go more, even though I think when we were talking about it at the time, with what like Chris Harris does, and I was saying like, yeah, that makes sense. But I think I really, tend to go more with just kind of like the logistics of the situation, just kind of knowing like, does a coach tend to be stubborn about this or that? Who are they playing? What's, so I'd probably tend to lean more towards like, all these, other factors, not just, based on talent. Now there's some positions like that, like I think running back is one where talent can kind of rise to the top quickly, like in Kansas City. I don't have a ton of stock in Damian Williams because, like Darwin Thompson's getting a lot of buzz and Damian Williams has never really been a full-time starter. And is he a guy that's going to get leapfrogged or something, So I don't know.
Okay. Well, it's just something to think about. I am looking at two players I'm looking at picking up, or just keeping an eye on to pick up, is Boone and Jamal Williams. Those are two guys that I think should be at least on your fantasy radar.
Yeah.
That's something I just wanted to bring up. Is there anybody? Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I just got offered a trade in the league that I drafted last night, where I've got so many running backs. This one may be, this guy's, I think he's just asking for too much, because like
what is he asking for?
I made him some offers for Odell, and he's asking for Odell's ranked number 12. Mm-hmm. He's asking for Devonta Freeman, Robert Woods, which I would be willing to trade those two for him, because Freeman's 25, Woods is 35 in the rankings. Then he's also asking for Duke Johnson. Which
I'd do it.
I'm tempted to. I probably need to get rid of some of this depth, but I may, like, if I'm gonna give up like three guys like that, I may see if let's see. I guess maybe he didn't. I think he didn't reject this other trade. He may still be kind of waiting to see. I offered him like Freeman, Duke Johnson, and Hilton, because I feel better about Robert Woods than I do Hilton. But I don't know. Maybe
it's so weird, dude. Like Hilton is Woods is a better player. I almost wonder if it's something about his name, just the name Woods. There's something about Woods that just makes me feel so bored.
Robert Woods.
Robert Woods.
That's
T.Y. Hilton and Robert Woods.
Yeah. Cooper Kupp. That's a better name.
Yeah.
Brandon
Kupp. Who's this guy?
Brandon Cooks. Like Brandon Cooks sounds like, he's heating. He's in the kitchen heating up.
But Robert Woods.
He's out in the woods somewhere. I don't know.
Robert Woods.
Bob Woods.
The Bob Ross of fantasy football.
Yeah. I don't know.
That's interesting. I think it probably would be better to give up TY. I'm ambivalent about Duke Johnson. Because I believe in his talent, especially as a pass catcher. But I've never really seen him between the tackle, and he's a smaller guy. I'm just assuming he's going to get hurt. He's going to get crushed. Like he's not CMC. He's not McCaffrey.
Yeah, well, and Houston's offensive line is bad.
See, that's another thing. Yeah, well, which could
play in his favor in some ways, because you've got. You might have Watson dumping the ball off more. Actually, it kind of does worry me a little bit for like Houston's receivers a little bit, because Duke Johnson is such a good pass catching back. I'm not taking Kiki or Fuller anywhere. Oh, I don't want Kiki, but Fuller I think is a pretty good value, because he's like this big play threat, and Watson just loves him for touchdowns.
He does.
He does touchdowns. Another thing actually about Godwin, I was looking this up last night about like red zone players, red zone targets and stuff like that. And I was thinking like in Tampa, you've got Evans, is this big guy. He's going to get more more of the red zone targets and stuff like that. Actually, last year, even sharing with Humphreys, and which, I mean, they're not going to throw to Deshaun Jackson in the red zone, but or wouldn't have then. But Godwin actually had more red zone targets than Mike Evans, which
I thought he was bereft of. That surprises me.
Yeah, it was just those were the numbers, and so it was. I was surprised, but maybe with him sort of being like the third wide receiver, maybe they just like the matchup better. So it'll be interesting to see if he kind of continues, to get that. But maybe Evans is just like doesn't quite in confined spaces, even though he's taller, doesn't kind of maybe move as quickly to get open, or I don't know. I don't know why that was. I didn't go back and look.
I wonder if their tight ends got most of the red zone targets.
Yeah, what I was looking at was just
because I bet OJ Howard and
Brait
yeah sucked up a lot of those, because I remember the year before Brait was like the red zone monster.
Yeah that's probably true. This just showed, I think, receivers. But
that's encouraging for Godwin though, because I that was my fear, like, because you were talking about it at one point, and you're like, I don't think he's going to get red zone. And I was like, and I looked it up, and I thought I saw that he didn't have very many red zone. And I was like, oh, that does kind of concern me. But so that encourages me, knowing that he had more than Evans. Wow.
Right. Yeah, it's a good sign for him, because I mean, he's going to get, the down the field throws and stuff too. So, I the more I think about Godwin, the more I still like Evans really well. But I mean, when there's a, when Evans is like late round 2, early round 3 versus Godwin round 6, or like $35 versus $15.
Yeah.
I kind of wish now I'd maybe taken more. Maybe I'll try to trade for Godwin in some other leagues.
Yeah. The thing is, for me, is Evans is one of those guys who I just think people hold him in their hearts more than they hold him, like he's just somebody who's always been like a target monster and gotten lots of points, but Godwin has come in and sort of taken the shine away for me.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know if I think it's legitimate with Evans. I mean, because he's a big guy in a passing offense. And I mean, like, he's not just like a touchdown guy or something, I mean, like, he had like 1,500 yards last year. So, I mean, he had a crazy amount of yards, but it does seem like he doesn't quite play up to his potential,
Let's see. Was there anything else that you wanted to talk about? Anything that came up for you?
I think that's about it for right now. I mean, we'll start to see some. We're doing the this week's podcast on Tuesday, right? So, we'll have gotten to see some stuff of like, okay, who's going to get cut? Some more along those lines by then. But
well, it's funny because this is the time when I get antsy, because I've been really disciplined about not taking a defense or a kicker, and or I'll take a defense but not a kicker, or a kicker not a defense.
Yeah.
And this is when I'm starting to think, I need to get my kicker, and I got to be disciplined, because stuff like today happened, where Shady gets dropped, and thank God I didn't drop Singletary anywhere, because I was thinking, nobody wants him to just be on the waiver wire,
Yeah. It's I kind of feel the same way. I normally get a kicker. I think there was maybe a league where I didn't take a kicker. And I think there's some solid guys out there. Actually, I think Matt Bryant's going to end up coming back and kicking for the Falcons. So last year he was down a little bit. He didn't get quite as many opportunities, and part of that, it wasn't just because he was injured. Like, just during games, they somehow just didn't end up in as many field goal situations. But before, I remember one year, I think maybe it's 2017 or something, where he was just a beast. I mean, he was like up there with Tucker and one or two.
Greg the leg.
Yeah. So he's maybe an option. Seattle's kicker, I think, is a good option. Like
Hashka. Or no. Who do they?
Jason Myers, because they went from
Myers. That's right. Hashka used to be their big kicker, but not anymore.
Yeah, well, they went through. Last year they had Janikowski. Or wait, no, it wasn't Janikowski. It was at one point I think they had Janikowski, and they're just a team.
Their kickers are yeah.
They are. They're going to be I think, kind of like the Ravens, where they're going to be running the ball a lot. They're going to not be getting it into the end zone a good bit. And so I think the Seattle kicker's a good option. San Diego is a good offense. They should be putting, their kicker should be in a good position. I think there are some good kicker options to take.
Oh, yeah.
And I think there's some good defense options out there too, because.
Yeah, we talked about Dallas, also Philadelphia.
Mm-hmm.
Philadelphia is going to be a solid defense. Who are you thinking? Some other ones?
I think this team's not on the wire in all of the ones I've seen, but I think the Patriots defense is going to be improved this year. I've seen a couple of things rank them as like maybe around 7 or so. New Orleans is interesting because they've got a lot of talent, but because they play in such a explosive, offense that can score, they end up, I think their defense maybe ends up on the field more than they would for like a team, that didn't have as good of an offense. So I think there's a lot of intriguing defensive prospects this season.
Okay, so I want to talk about two. Since you're a Colts fan, let's get your take. 2 options that I'm looking both from the Colts, and that is the defense and their kicker, Vinatieri. How does the recent change affect him? Because this is how I look at kickers. My favorite kickers, it seems to me that good kickers come from teams that can make chunk plays but can't get in the end zone. So you usually don't have a strong running back, which Mac could be, but he's not like a Fournette or Barkley.
Yeah.
So what do you think? I'm looking at Vinatieri. I've always been a big fan of Vinatieri. I think he's got a big leg, but he missed a couple of kicks last year that were interesting.
Yeah, he's getting a little bit older. He's starting to have some misses, and the offense. I don't like Vinatieri this year.
Really?
I don't like him as a top 10. The Colts defense. Here's the problem. I like them a lot. I almost might. I think they might be worth taking if you if you can afford 2 defenses on your roster. It's hard for me to justify that this season because there's so many good running back handcuff options and so many good later round receiver options, that guys that could, have some upside. But I think, the tough thing with the Colts is they start out on the road at San Diego. San Diego can score points, we think. They play the Titans. And then I think that one's on the road too. And then they come home and they play Atlanta, which is, a pretty good offense. And so they start out. So even though I like the Colts overall, I think maybe it might be a case where you can use some other options that are out there. And then, after a few games, okay, their schedule's going to level off a little bit, but they still play some good teams. They play New Orleans. They play New Orleans in New Orleans. They play Pittsburgh in Pittsburgh. I talked about.
Yeah, I'm not going to pick up.
Yeah. It's just that they've got some. I think they're worth. They'll be worth streaming for sure at times. Yeah. But especially with that early season, schedule and being on the road and stuff, it's hard for me to jump on them right away. So.
Yeah, I'm actually sticking with Dallas, man. Look, I'm looking at their schedule right now. They play the New York Giants, which come on,
yeah,
and then Washington, and then Miami.
That's pretty good.
That's the first 3 games, man. And then they play they play New Orleans and then the Packers. So it might just be like if I'm streaming, get them for the first 3 games and then start to look for my other options.
Are those games against Washington and Miami on the road or at home?
The one against Washington's on the road, and the one against Miami's at home.
Okay.
And then the other one is Denver. So they play Oakland first game on the road, and then they play Chicago at home. Then they play the Packers away, but then they play Jacksonville, Chargers, Tennessee. I don't know. I think it could be one to keep your eye on for streaming, at least.
Yeah. Well, and they've got good pass rushers. They've got Von Miller, Bradley Chubb, guys that can get sacks and create turnovers. And that's my only concern with the Cowboys is it seems like for a number of years now, the Cowboys have been like a bend but don't break, or a bend but don't break as much type defense. Like they just haven't just racked up.
They got Taco, man. They got Taco.
Which one's Taco?
Taco Carlson.
Oh. Yeah, they've got some good guys, but they really haven't, like, it just seems like they haven't been, like really good at getting to the quarterback and that type of thing. So, I don't know, because that's the thing with fantasy defenses is it's not just about, like there are some good real world defenses that will hold teams to not that many points, but not, get that many sacks and turnovers and stuff. So that's maybe my kind of fear with Dallas.
Yeah, I get that. Yeah. But I mean, at that point in the draft, at this point, like picking them up at the waiver wire.
Yeah.
I don't know. Can you see anybody else that you would?
Just for those, from what I've seen from those early games, again, like if the Patriots are there, the Patriots play the first game at home against the Steelers, and the Steelers are just not the same team on the road. I'm actually worried about my Steelers, like James Conner and Juju in that opener against the Patriots, because the Patriots like to shut down the running game and they like to shut down your best receiver. So I'm worried about both James Conner and Juju in that
first game.
If I have other options, I would consider, depending on who I have, I would consider benching them for that first game, because in Foxborough, it's just a different thing. And just the Steelers just never seem to play well there. So, so I would consider the Patriots again with the Seahawks, with what they've got,
especially
now adding Clowney. They've got the Bengals in that first game.
Yeah.
But Dallas isn't, I don't think Dallas is a bad option, but I don't know. We'll see what we get out of them. I mean, they looked really good pressuring the Texans, but was that about Dallas's front, or was that about the Texans' terrible
line?
Yeah.
Well, but I mean, look at who they're playing, though.
Right.
I mean, let's see. Let me look at that again. So, okay, so the New York Giants, their line sucks.
Yeah.
Although I think they've repaired it a lot over the offseason. Washington, their line is if they're all healthy, I don't know. I haven't ever seen them all healthy.
Yeah.
Miami, their line sucks.
Yep.
But then you go the Saints, great line. GB. Green Bay line's pretty good. Jets line is better. Philadelphia line, I don't know. Where's the Philadelphia's line at this point?
Philadelphia's line is a beast.
They used to have the best line in the NFL, but it seemed to kind of fall off last year. Did they have a lot of injuries?
I think they were one of those teams that had some injuries, but like this year, everything I've seen, it's people talking about them
really
as if they are just going to be a beast. So
that makes me want to take Sanders even more. Wentz too. Nobody's talking about Wentz, and is it?
Wentz is a guy who's I started I've got him in a fair number of leagues because when he's healthy, he's like 5, 6 in terms of quarterbacks, you know. So you can get him cheap, like in snake drafts. You can get him usually around like ninth round, maybe.
Yeah,
Uh,
easily
auction,
no 10th.
auction drafts, yeah, ninth, 10th. Auction drafts, you can usually get him for $3.
Yeah.
I took actually in that league that I drafted last night. Um, I ended up, because I had a little more money than usual, I took Deshaun for 10, which normally I don't pay that for a quarterback, and normally Deshaun goes for more too. But he stuck at 8 for a second, and then I think somebody just wanted to, like, couldn't let him go for that, you know. And I think it's the guy who had Mahomes, and so he bid another buck more up to 9, and I'm like, I've got money. I'll go ahead and take him for 10. And then I took Wentz for 3, thinking like, oh, I could, trade one of them. So
quarterbacks are hard to trade though, man.
They are, but I don't mind having two.
Yeah.
And I haven't spent on quarterbacks in really any other league. Like I've spent, like the most I've done in an auction draft, was prior to that was like $5 for anybody. And, in snake drafts, I did have one where I'm like, okay, I'll like 7th round, I ended up taking Luck. And then, so that didn't work out, but my 7th round pick is not gonna, my 7th round pick quarterback retiring is not going to make or break my season.
No.
So I didn't mind spending 10 on Deshaun for one league,
Yeah. All right. Well, we definitely, I think there's a lot of content in this episode. I wish I could have gotten AJ's take on stuff, but he's MIA. Yeah. I don't see anything. Hopefully, he'll be back Tuesday. We'll get his take on some of these things. But until then, I wish you adieu.
Thanks for having me. Good to see you.
Thank you for coming, dude. And good talks. We'll see you. We'll see what happens in the next couple of days. I think tomorrow, for some reason, Sundays is just the football Sunday day, and a lot of news comes out on Sundays.
Yeah, we may get a Zeke.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Announcement. That'll be something to watch for the weekend.
Oh, please. I need him.